Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome and thank you so much for joining me tonight on the late one in review. What's your news this Thursday night, Thursday, the 25th of August, 2022? And I want to thank you so much for joining me tonight. Those on Instagram, those on Facebook, those on YouTube, those on Twitter as well. I say last week, to say let's give it a break. The first in a long time. We're going through all this COVID bits and developments. We've got in a week and a half time, ladies and gentlemen. My image is a bit blurred. Am I looking a bit blurred? I think I'm a bit blurred. I must actually say that's correct. Actually, somebody say my image look a bit blurred. Let's see if I can get the image magic. Yes, yes. In a week time or so, we'll be having the new prime minister. Ladies and gentlemen, we also have issues in regards to the oil increase, petrol. Fortunately, I'm seeing petrol dropping in my area, but for the house, gas and electric, as far as I'm concerned, they say that is going to keep going up with off gem. But ladies and gentlemen, before I go any further, let me just bring in Anthony and let's just go for it. Hey, Anthony, how you doing?
Hey, Sylbourne, good to see you again. Thanks for having me.
That's good, man. That's good. You said it's a little blurry, and while I'm looking clear and everything, but I see where you're coming from. Look at it on the YouTube because I'm looking there. It looks a bit blurry, but I can see.
It looks okay now in the smaller shot. You look okay.
That's what I'm actually seeing. I'll have to check out all these engineers to see what's going on. But listen, it's another week, Anthony. It's we're alive, we're well. And the interesting thing is, in a week time, we're having a new prime minister. We're going to speak about that. The great news is that a lot of children are very excited, or some might not be very excited about their grades with the GCSEs. And also, we have to touch on the petrol, the gas, and electric in our homes, because that is something which is a felt need. And it's so unfortunate about also the the shooting of this 9-year-old girl. That shows that while so much things are happening, and we're going to see what we can chew on tonight. Yeah. So let's go at it. What's your take? What's your first take?
Well, I think, to be honest, the first take we have to talk about, really, given that, as you mentioned, literally, in the next sort of couple of weeks' time, there will be a new occupant at number 10.
Yes.
I suppose the thing that we ought to really sort of ask the question is after all these different hustings that have been taking place, the front runner is Liz Truss at the moment, but can we really trust Liz Truss? Is it only trust?
Were you planning that? Were you planning that line? Trust Liz Truss.
Is it only trust by trust? Well, no. The only reason why I say that, Sylbourne, is because we all know that politicians, and I think there was a poll out today that said that 20% of the public who were actually surveyed don't trust. Sorry, not 20%. I think it's more like 80% don't trust the politicians to actually keep the promises that they say they're going to do, and I think that also relates to Liz Truss as well, and which is not surprising given the fact that in the last couple of weeks we've heard her say that, for example, make comments about the workers in this country haven't got enough graft. We've now heard her say that she's going to take back money from the NHS. We haven't heard any particular plan on what she's going to do about migrant control or cost of living. She always keeps reiterating the same thing. I'm going to do the Green Levy. I'm going to do the Green Levy. I mean, if I hear her say I'm going to do the Green Levy again, I think I'll throw something at the TV screen. I've never heard a politician make so many of the same statements without actually having anything to justify in terms of any detail. I mean, it's almost like watching someone on a YouTube video who's learnt something by rote, and then they keep saying the same thing. So I think it is important that we still talk about these things because potentially this is going to be our new prime minister.
Do you think at the same time that it's somewhat maybe difficult for them to go off in a particular limb at this time, when really and truly they are not actually competing against an opposition party, but within themselves, And at the end of the day, they're going to have to close ranks and work together. Rishi could be a member of the cabinet as well if he loses, but it's pointing towards him not winning, of course. And Liz Truss, if she loses, pointing towards her winning, would want to have Rishi also in her cabinet, vice versa. So is it that when they go in, we're going to see things that actually making all these fundamental shift at this time? Because there's not much they can do or can say that can make any big difference until they're in.
Well, I think there's a couple of things, to be honest with you, Sylbourne. I mean, you're right. They can't actually give policy, but you have to remember when they're going in, they're not going in as a new cabinet minister. They're going in as the prime minister, which means that their word is their bond. And if they're saying to us now, the public, that what I'm going to do is X, then the public, when they get in, are going to expect him to see X. So if either one of them says, for example, like for example, you've mentioned the cost of living. If they're saying, right, most people now want action right now, which I know they can't give because they are not the prime minister.
Yes.
But what people want to hear is, and what the members of the Conservative Party who are going to pick the new prime minister want to hear is, well, what actually is your plan? What are you going to do to help the people with this massive cost of living crisis that we have right now? And we're not getting any detail. And I understand that maybe they can't give as much detail as we would like. Certainly I would like to see. But there should be at least a framework, a basic sort of structure that sort of gives us an indication as, okay, well, these are the steps. And once these steps have been taken, this is the outcome that, I expect to see.
Yeah, that's very interesting. A gentleman said to me last night, I was at this event with the High Commissioner of Jamaica who's departing, and he said to me very carefully, because he knows I'm a conservative, he said, what is it that the conservative will do at this time for people who are suffering, people who are having it hard? You can't just speak about the economy, you will talk about the people at the same time, which is a very strong question. And it's such a felt need drive at this time, whereby with the high cost of living, the inflation we got in the homes, people are asking, what is it that the government can do? But the bigger question is, what is it that politicians can do? Because Keir Starmer also set out a plan as how to deal with all this windfall tax. I know we're going to touch on to that there. But are we seeing a lack of, we keep saying that all the while, but we're going to say it again, a lack of confidence and trust in politicians taking countries and taking people out of the possible miry clay?
Well, clearly, politicians don't have answers for all questions, but they are our elected, officials in these positions. And so we have to take what they say seriously. And at the end of the day, the people right now, understand that there is a cost of living crisis, and we're going to touch on it in a bit more detail. But in the case of Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, what the public and what the Conservative members want to see is they want to see a broad brush approach to how are you going to tackle this issue? What's your view on this issue? How will you deal with that? They want, some clarity around, well, why should I actually pick you? What are you going to do differently from the incumbent? And if all they're getting is stock answers, well, when I get into number 10, I'm going to, I'll be able to, make the right decision then. Or when I get in, I'm going to look at this. It's very vague, and that's the reason why people turn off from politicians, because what we normally want to see or want to hear is an answer to a straight question. We don't want another question to be given back to us. Yes. And I think this is where people turn off with politicians, because if you ask, and we've seen it time and time again on TV, when someone says, what's your view on this? And they go off somewhere down the road, come back round the roundabout, and they still haven't answered the question. It's a simple question. Do you believe in this or that? And they still don't answer it. So I think you're right on one hand, Sylbourne, in that it is maybe slightly difficult to be very specific, but I think both candidates probably could outline their overall strategy that explains how they're going to deal with some of these big issues that people need to hear today.
Well, it is looking very clear. I mean, viewers can know that by the September the 5th, it is more likely than unlikely that Liz Truss was born in Oxford in 1975, is deemed to be, and more than likely is going to be, the next Prime Minister of the UK, a lady. Rishi Sunak, dynamic. At the same time, do you think there's a role for Rishi in this cabinet?
Well,
Potentially.
most definitely. I think either winner must put the other person in the cabinet. It's a given because of the support that he has both in the parliamentary party and also in the country at large in terms of the Conservative members. So if that individual was not given a cabinet position, a lot of the goodwill that goes with being the Prime Minister, which we all know they need to have, would just dissipate. And, at the end of the day, it's a party and she needs to carry the rest of the party with her. And if she suddenly, if he or she, whoever becomes the Prime Minister, doesn't actually put that person in the cabinet in some senior position, which they, inevitably will get, because don't forget, they're both running for Prime Minister. So by coming second, they're not going to be given a junior role. One of them is going to end up being the education minister or the health minister or the chancellor. Albeit, I think Kwame has already got that one sealed up. So, they're going to get one of those senior cabinet jobs.
Kwame? Which Kwame are you talking about?
The guy who's currently acting as the business secretary.
Oh, the business secretary. Okay. Thingy there. Yes. The interesting thing also is that, Anthony, as you know, I'm a voter, and I did my vote. Not by the postal vote, but by the Q or QPR, whatever they call it, and I got my confirmation that I voted, and that's it. I believe most persons within the Conservative Party have voted already, and it's the reason why the figures are looking like that. Many people are now looking at this and say, 160,000 people, you are the ones who actually are going to be voting for this new Prime Minister. According to what people are saying now, and the pundits and the political persons, based on the shift that Liz is doing, based on the shift that Rishi is doing, we're looking at a potential general election as well. More than likely.
Well, to be honest, I think it's inevitable, unless whoever wins decides that they will stick to the mandate that was given when they had the coalition. And they decided that each
the coalition. You mean since Boris won, not the coalition?
No. Well, I think it was the coalition that agreed that each term now would be 5 years.
Okay, right.
So I think if they stick to that, that means that they'll get at least another 2 years out of it.
Yes.
But I think that what will probably happen, which normally inevitably happens, is because they haven't got a mandate from the people, they will want to get a mandate from the people in order to justify their position, and then actually, ditch some of the people who they have to take on, and actually put in their own people and actually create the party and the cabinet in their own image. So even though it's not inevitable, but I do think that probably sooner than the allotted time, they may end up calling a general election when they think it's good for them, just to actually get the actual official mandate from the public to be able to say, well, I have been elected by the public.
But when you say elected by the public, I mean, I know I'm trying to delve into this a bit quickly. It is only if Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak deviate away as much as possible from the mandate of Boris Johnson, because when they won the election, it was the party that won the election. It's not a presidential system. So therefore, there's no need for an election if they are still following through with the mandate. To say that they need the mandate of the people, that's a mandate of a new policy, a new manifesto.
Well, that's what you're going to be getting from whoever comes in, Sylbourne. I mean, don't forget, we've already heard. I mean, listen, when I think it was either the first or second televised interview, when both candidates, or when there was about 5 of them still in the race, and they asked them, would you have Boris in your cabinet? None of them said yes. Which means that none of them will then implement the policies that he's been taking on board, because they see that as not necessarily being a vote winner. Don't forget, Liz Truss has already said that she's going to reverse the national insurance decision, right? So we're already seeing changes in what was agreed originally being thrown out the window. We're seeing now differences of opinion based on what's going to happen with the cost of living crisis, how he or she will deal with that. These are all things that aren't that weren't in the manifesto when Boris won. These are all new things. I mean, of course, they're going to be talking about levelling up and all this sort of stuff.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, as Mr. Sunak has pointed out, levelling up, NHS, schools. We've seen recently with the water companies and the strikes that have been going on. They all require money, in order for the cost of living for people to get these pay rises. Where will that money come from if people aren't going out spending to get the tax revenue that's needed?
Yeah, that's very interesting. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining us on In Review today. What's your news? What's your news? What's your news? Anthony and myself, the author of Think It, Plan It, Do It Now. So therefore, the key thing is, ladies and gentlemen, if you got something, you think it, you plan it, you just do it now. Right, Anthony? That's a key thing, isn't it?
Yeah, procrastination doesn't get you anywhere.
Procrastination doesn't get you anywhere. And I'm the man who is a walk and talk motivational, walking in the park every day, even though the rain has sort of thrown me off course this time. But I've got to battle through it because I say, hey, can't make the rain stop me a long time, innit? Now,
hey, once you start something, you got to finish it.
You got to do it. Now, just moving on from that still. But Anthony, you mentioned about the switch or the leaving from the NIs. What are some of the things that you believe that this new prime minister with this new opportunity should do? What should they get rid of? Like, for instance, the Rwanda policy. What do you think they should get rid of, or what should they get in now? Ladies and gentlemen, what is it that you believe the government with this time now, the new prime minister, should do? Yes.
Well, you've put me on the spot, but I think with the first 100 days, what the new prime minister has got to do immediately is to address the, quite serious issue around the cost of living crisis. I mean, we've already heard energy companies coming out and actually saying, that once the cap comes out, I think it's tomorrow. I think we're looking at maybe even £5,000 by January, which, quite frankly, is just staggering that we're in this situation. And I think what there needs to be is a very clear policy or a very clear activity laid out as to, right, how are we going to address this for the public at large? Are we going to put a cap on the energy companies so that we actually can get back some of the profits that they've made and actually put that back into the system so that we can actually give that back to individuals as money to help them during this current period until the Ukraine war has been resolved? Because obviously most of the problems that have come from the cost of living, we have to acknowledge, have come as a direct result of the war in Ukraine at the moment.
Yes.
That's where most of this problem has come. And, the main issue is around gas, which comes from Russia. And obviously Putin is obviously using that as a leverage against the West. So that's one of the things we need to really try and find out. Cost of living, is there any input that we can do with the current war situation to maybe act as a peacemaker? Yes. I know it's not as easy said than done, but clearly, what we need to do is have, rather than some of this very sort of language that's very war and very bullish. I think we need to tone down the rhetoric a little bit and actually try and find some sort of common ground that at least will allow both sides to walk away without losing face, but allow the war to end. Because what we don't want this thing to do is to go on for another 6 months, another year, because it would simply mean more pressure for us all. So I think they need to look at things like that. They need to also find a way of addressing the crisis in the doctors part of the NHS right now. We're seeing loads of doctors leave the industry. What can be done to actually try and encourage doctors to stay? We're also seeing the same with teachers. Teachers are now walking away from teaching now because they're saying that they're becoming more of a social person, in terms of the classroom. They're having to, manage all of these different activities around social issues when they're still getting paid the same money and they're not getting any resource to help them. So I think we need to look at some of these sort of real key areas that are vital to our well-being, as well as to our educational side as well, and as well as to us in the pocket, and try and lay out for the public, here's my 10-point plan for the next 100 days. This is what I intend to do to address cost of living, education, health, maybe try and act as a peacemaker in the war, a really, something which is tangible where we can actually see what the results of their efforts will be, rather than just this sort of smoke and mirrors stuff that they always talk about.
Anthony, you just mentioned something, that there are shortage of teachers, nurses, and all the persons leaving the school, these different industries. Saturday night I had a show, and you can see the topic there, which was a nation brain drain versus greener pastures and better opportunities. Talk and sip Saturday night. There's been this massive discussion in Jamaica about teachers leaving the profession in Jamaica, nurses leaving the profession in Jamaica. But it's interesting, if somebody's listening from Jamaica now, they say, hang on a second, that's why teachers are leaving Jamaica. It shows that we're in this global community, isn't it? Where everybody's going around the world, shifting, going from different paths, trying to make things work. We said it the other day, that is it a lack of in effective leadership that created this thing, and we're actually calling the boogeyman Putin?
Well, no. I think what's happened is the pandemic has really given everybody an opportunity to reflect, review, and then to actually decide whether or not this is the sort of lifestyle that they want. Don't forget, people's work-life balance has completely reversed. Before, people were having to sort of spend 90% of their time going into work and actually being in work and all the rest of it. They've had almost 2 years of actually working from home and actually having a different lifestyle. And now they want that lifestyle to remain. But also, what it's given them an opportunity to do is to look at the current working lifestyle and what they're currently doing, and weigh up, is this what I want for the future, for the next 10, 15, 20 years? It's really given people a different perspective on what work means to them and what they value. And I think this has happened all over the world now. And I think, my daughter, for example, is a head of business and economics in a secondary school here in London.
Yeah.
And, one of her concerns is that she sees her brother earning, maybe twice, maybe even 3 times what she earns, plus gets corporate bonuses. And she's wondering, well, hang on a minute, why am I only getting this for the amount of work I have to do, which is equally as demanding, but I'm not getting anywhere near the pay that you're getting? So I think people have seen this disparity in pay, and they're thinking, well, if I'm going to put all this effort in, but I'm not going to get rewarded for it, I'd rather do something else.
Yeah, what's the sense, Well, let's move on from that quickly, and we touch on to the prices of these energy prices. And I was looking at an article which you sent me, and it says gas and electric are becoming more expensive, largely because of rising import costs. The recent increase in the price cap set by Ofgem, the UK's emerging market regulator, saw bills go up for millions of households across the country. And it's set to somewhat try to explain it. I was looking at it from a layman perspective. I'm a lawyer, not an economist. And I was saying, hang on a second, Anthony, we live close together. We see that Shell petrol station, it was at 189 a few weeks ago. It's at 169 now, 1.69. But yet at the same time, Ofgem is saying, you're going to get this cap and it's going to go up and it's going to double. So one is looking at it and saying, hang on a second, what is really happening? Is this the scam of the century? Anthony, I don't know. You maybe have delved into it because you're more of an economist than myself. Can you make some sense to it as to what is happening without saying Putin?
Well, unfortunately, all roads lead back to him for gas. And, I think we just simply can't get away from the fact that, it's not only in the UK, France are having the same problem, albeit not as severe, because a lot of the people in the UK, your audience listening, will probably, like myself, get our gas from EDF. But EDF is a French company. And EDF have only put the increase in France, I believe it's up to about maybe 5 or 6%.
Yes.
But they put their increase up here in the UK upwards of 25%. And that's because they don't want to annoy their home base in France, because it's a French company. But they can do that with us because obviously it's been privatized and they provide the gas to us, right? So they're actually passing on those costs that they're having to incur from Putin to us over here, because the actual gas over here has been privatized and they're providing it to us, and there's nothing we can do about it. The government can't do anything apart from simply saying, okay, we'll freeze the cap and keep it at what it was last year, for example. So you know, this is the danger when you don't have your own energy supply, which we don't, and we're reliant on other people.
The thing about it, and the big question is, when many people have to face this and have to ask this question, what do I do if I can't afford to pay? Because you got these campaigns which are out there. What is it? The don't pay campaign. What happens if you don't pay your energy bills? You know, people are having it, well, they're having it hard already, and they're going to have it harder. You know, what do people do? What is it?
Well,
Is
I
it?
understand.
Hold on. Is it like? Sorry to make this sound funny. Somebody just say it's not funny at all. I said, what do you do if you can't pay your bills? And then they showed Teddy Prendergast, turn off the lights and light a candle. You know what I mean?
Well, listen, Sylbourne, it isn't funny at all for the people who are struggling, especially if you're on prepay meters and things like this. And you know the bill has suddenly gone up. You know, normally you'd put in, you know, let's say for example, you know, £1 or £2, and it would, and the electricity would last, you know, maybe 3 or 4 hours, and now you're having to put in maybe £8 or £9, you know, or something ridiculous like that for the same amount of time. You know, if you can't pay, I do understand that a number of the energy companies have asked that you ring in to them to actually tell them that you can't pay, so that they can either do a suspension or find some way that they can actually assist you in some means. But ultimately, you know, the bottom line is, if you really cannot pay the increase because you simply do not have the funds to allow you to pay, then it is going to be a question of what is going to have to give for you to be able to actually put aside the money to pay, which, and normally what that means is you're going to have to either eat less, you're going to have to, you know, where your pocket can go to, you're going to have to find those savings. It's a little bit like, if I use the analogy, my brother lives in America, and you know he's been in the situation before where you have to pay for your medical bills over there in the States.
Yes.
And if you don't pay the medical bills, you know there's no NHS there. So he's been in the awkward situation whereby there's been times when he's had to pay his rent rather than pay for his medication.
Wow.
Right? It's as simple as that, because he simply does not have the funds at certain times to pay both. And you know, there's no matter of you know, various schemes and whatever. Ultimately, it comes down to, do you have the hard ready funds available? And in his case, there had to be something to give, and what was to give was, okay, I'll have to eat, and I'll have to, you know, get the medication whenever. I think over here, sadly, there are going to be people who are going to be really struggling and having to go to various food banks and, you know, seek support from the government or seek support from the energy companies to find ways to keep their lighting on this winter.
Because one of the things that charities are saying is that not paying energy bills can have very serious consequences. And what is the Don't Pay campaign? There's a campaign which is saying Don't Pay Group, which is demanding a reduction of bills, what it calls at an affordable level. Says more than 100,000 people have pledged to cancel their direct debit payments from 1st of October. That is a date energy price cap, the maximum amount suppliers can charge customers in England, Scotland, and Wales for each unit of energy used. What is it can Liz Truss do? What is it? And I know we're going back there. What would be one of the best advice to the new incoming prime minister? Because they all know this. They all talk about this. Boris, of course, can't do nothing much at this time because you know, he's saying that you know, I'm not going to make any fundamental shift. I'll just go to Ukraine and just support Ukraine at this time. What do you think Liz Truss can do?
Well, I think what Liz Truss can do, if anything, and if it's possible, and I don't know if it's political, I don't know if it's something that she has the power to do.
Yes.
But what I would do is, you know, we've heard about the cap being capped at what it was last year, or I think that's what Sir Keir Starmer has suggested as well. But you know, the cap gets set. It's going to be set again in tomorrow, and then I think we're having one again in the new year. I mean, to be honest, what I would say is, look, the cap actually, you know, would be frozen for 2 years. So rather than, so for me, I would say immediately there is going to be no price increase. This £5,000 isn't going to happen, and I would actually say to the energy companies that what there is, I would actually introduce a cap whereby they can't charge more than a certain amount for the energy that they supply us, so that we don't have this crazy situation of vast profits being made and big salaries being given when people are struggling. So I would, at the moment, I think it went up to £2,000. That was quite a big hike. I would say if I was Liz Truss, I'd be saying, right, if it ever reaches that threshold of 2,000, it's capped at that amount, so it can't go any higher.
Yes.
And then that way, at least we know that would be the worst case scenario for people, rather than this open-ended situation where it's going from where it was before to 2,000 to 3,000, 4,000. And maybe some commentators have said even 5,000, which is just ridiculous. I mean, no one can sustain that unless you have a money tree
in the face when persons actually cannot pay their bills, and then wobble, all of a sudden you see Shell, BP, all these companies making excess billions, millions to billions in profits in quarters, not years. And then at the same time, you're saying that it's been hard. And then you're hearing again that you're paying not because of what you use, but you're actually paying based on the shortfall of the failure of other companies. That's what it said. That's what the article said. The failure of companies. So therefore, the people are picking up the ineffect or the lack of good management. I mean, Anthony, this is one demonstration. This is one thing that I would support if the whole country stand up and say, not say don't pay your petrol or your gas or your electric, but say something must give.
Yeah, but I think sadly, Sylbourne, we see this with politicians, and it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, if you go to a private company like Shell, normally the person who leads that company is somebody who's probably got quite a lot of experience in running a very big multinational, and that's the person who runs it. The reason why they're compensated so well is because their performance is always linked to the profits that the company makes. And normally they've got a track record in doing X, Y, Z for maybe the sort of organisation they're running. But when you go to government now, for example, Liz Truss is going to become the Prime Minister. What background has Liz Truss got in running anything? So you've got somebody like this now who will be in charge of.
I don't think you like any conservative government.
Well, to be honest, Sylbourne, what I do like is I like people who actually are in those posts. I think if we, and I know I've said this before on your show, but if you go back maybe into the 70s and 80s, sadly, when I'm old enough to remember those days. You had individuals of gravitas who actually were knowledgeable in the brief they were responsible for. Lord Heseltine, for example, as the Defence Secretary. These people we still remember today, because they had that gravitas, so they had that authority, and they made decisions correctly. Now we've got people who are, you get ministers who are, I mean, if you look at the education department, for example, how many education secretaries have we had in the last 4 years? For example, I think they've had 4 education ministers in the last 4 years. So what does that tell you? It tells you that the people they put into those roles are just using it as a stepping stone, and they don't really have any qualifications to run the department. So they're putting in people who are really clowns.
And really and truly, the batch which is in now are persons who are just there to sort of warm the benches when everybody.
Well, that's right, and I think this is the problem. You want people, I think we would give a bit more. We would be a bit more happy if we had people who are running like they maybe do in the States, where they bring in people who are from industry to actually run the economy. So, for example, when they had the big banking crash, I think the person who came in to run the treasury over there was the guy who was in charge of not Goldman Sachs. I think it was Goldman Sachs. I think he's one of the sort of main bankers out there. He came and actually managed the treasury in the US and turned things around. We need people who actually know what they're doing to run the show.
That's a good point there. And in America, what they do, they bring in these highly professionals and they take them through the Senate and they scrutinize them. But of course, these are persons who have their brief. The president is there. Yes, I think there's got to be a fundamental shift, because at the end of the day, people are just coming in because they're a member of parliament. I become a member of parliament. okay, we need something for Sylbourne. Let's make him finance minister. I don't know one jack. I just said it a while ago. I don't know nothing about economics really, but you just put somebody there. But listen, that means to say, talking about education, GCSEs that came out today, and students, are some are happy, some are not happy, and they're saying, "Hey, you guys just came through a pandemic period, so don't beat yourself too hard." What's your take now on the education sector? We just touched on it a while ago, the leadership, because they said it's not been great according to the news, or not as
Well,
high as yeah.
well, the first thing I would say is I would say congratulations to all those students who actually have managed to navigate the real difficulties they've had during the pandemic, and doing their studies from home where they haven't had a sort of teacher in the classroom, etc., and all of the things they've had to deal with during that period, and to end up with getting their results today. So those who actually have got the results they wanted and have done well, my first thing is to actually say congratulations to
Yes,
them for doing
yes.
a good job in very difficult circumstances. I would also say it's unfortunate that we've heard today from Richie Sunak that he was one of the people, or he was the only person who actually said that he didn't think it was the right thing to do for schools to be closed during the pandemic, and that the Conservative leadership took too much advice from SAGE, which was the
Yeah,
scientific body during that period. He actually
yeah.
felt that, given the evidence, that schools could have been kept open. So I think,
Mm,
again, that shows the leadership or lack of to make a collective decision around what perhaps was known at the time that we didn't know, and maybe the students couldn't have been penalised in the way that they were.
mm.
But at the end of the day, I think sadly, we have to really try and support our students, because these are the future leaders. These individuals will become future leaders in different walks of life, either entrepreneurs or in government or wherever. So we need to try and make sure that these people coming out from schools going into their careers now are given the best opportunities to find new ways of not new ways of working, but jobs, and support them as they go ahead. Maybe one of the things we could do is to maybe reduce the university fees, or do something around that, so that the burden isn't so much on people when they leave university, because obviously we've had the increase in student fees over the
Yeah.
years.
And
Maybe there could be
they're talking about increasing it again as well.
yeah,
Mm.
they are. So maybe there could be a moratorium on student fees, and and maybe look at ways of maybe saying that the students who graduated over this pandemic period, or those who have come through uni during this pandemic period, don't have to pay their uni fees. Because don't forget, some of these people who have gone to university didn't actually see any teachers. So I'm not really sure what they paid for.
Yeah, and interesting talking about that, because there's a school called Brampton. I think we were discussing it earlier, which churn out as normal very good grades, and these students go to Cambridge. But you're saying that there's a sort of gap whereby it is good to go there, but somehow the level of socialization and the company, the end result is not realized as how it
Yeah.
could
So,
be.
so what I'm saying is that
Mm.
when we've had a number of these schools, Brampton, I think the name of the school is, where they've had
Yeah.
a large number of ethnic minority students who actually have done really well in their GCSEs and A levels, and they've been actually got places at places like Cambridge and Oxford. But I think what the findings have shown is that when they've gone through to these universities, Cambridge and Oxford, is that
Yes.
when they leave, they don't then actually attain the sort of positions that other peer students achieve, because they're not actually part of that peer group in terms of being able to network with those individuals who may already have had the benefit of going through the system, or whose parents already know a friend, or know someone in that circle that allows them to give them the break. Because we all know that in those environments, but especially Oxford and Cambridge, it's the network that you have which is just as valuable as the degree that you gain at the end of it.
Yes.
And it's those networks and people who you know and who you meet, who then open doors for you later on. And I think what's happening is we're seeing that some of those doors considerably aren't being opened for ethnic minorities, because they don't have the same background, they don't have the same cultures, they don't actually socialize with them. So therefore, we're not seeing the same opportunities then given to them when they leave the universities and actually go into sort of maybe corporate roles or whatever, because they don't have the same network connections as, for example, maybe their white colleagues who do have those network groups. And I think that's also borne out by the fact that if you look at the FTSE 100, I think last year there was a survey done where it was identified that there was not one ethnic minority member or one ethnic minority person in the top positions in the FTSE 100 companies, i.e. CEO, chairman, etc. And a year on, nothing has changed. There's also none. So what does that tell you? That tells you again that to get into those roles, you need to be in the network of those individuals, those peer groups, so that opportunities and doors open for you, because that's how a lot of people get those breaks.
I'm buzzing to come in here and just to say, how then does that work? How then can there be a build of a new sort of network? My philosophy at times is that seeing yourself in a group or in a network or in an organization and you see that it is not very diverse, I think the most important thing is to bring more people of your color, your sort of racial background in there, the more, and then build a community. Don't you think? Because at the end of the day, I mean, is it that you've got to mix with others who don't want to mix with you, or you build your own community at the same time, build your network?
Well, I think it's a question of both. I mean, it's not, you can't build your own community and actually leave the other one behind. It's both have to work together. That's the whole basis of networking. You work with a number of different people from different backgrounds. But I think ultimately, and we've seen this also this week as well, Sylbourne, with the RAF, where the leader of one of the senior recruitment managers in the RAF has actually resigned because she was asked to actually take on ethnic minority members over and above white male candidates, simply to try and meet quotas of the diversity numbers. And she actually said, well, hang on a minute, I'm not prepared to do that, to simply just take people on just to tick the boxes to say we've taken on more ethnic diverse people. And also, to be honest, the ethnic diverse people like us, we don't want charity. We want to get the jobs on merit.
Yes.
And when we're in these organizations, what we have to do is we have to show that we're both able to work with a wide range of people, so that we're not seen as being judged by our color, but we're being judged by our talent. And we get these jobs because people feel actually, Sylbourne is the right person to become the CEO. Don't forget, it's not unusual. We did have, the guy who was in charge of Credit Suisse. I forget his name now.
Thaddeus, TH or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Tandy, I think.
Tandy. Yeah.
Yeah. He was chief exec of one of the British banks over here before he became chief exec of Credit Suisse. Now, I know the only reason why I remember him is because he's the only one I can think of who's been a chief exec who was from an ethnic minority background. But also, the funny thing is, over here in the UK, that's the problem. In the US, who's the chief executive of Google? It's an Indian guy. Who's the chief executive of Apple? It's an Indian guy, right? So they don't seem to have a problem with diversity and putting those type of people in senior roles. It seems to be a UK centric problem that we don't seem to want to either we don't have the talent coming through. I mean, we've seen this, for example, also in acting. Why is it a number of our British ethnic minority actors have to go abroad to get the big roles? We've seen this with Idris Elba. He went to the States to do The Wire before he's now come back to get all the publicity. We've seen this also with the guy who was in 12 Years a Slave. Why is it that they have to go away to get
John Bayer as well?
Yeah, why do they have to do that? And then they come back, and when they come back as being successful, that's when all of a sudden they then get offered the positions. Why aren't they offered the positions now? Because they can do the job.
Is it the mindset? Is it all institutional mindset? at the
Well,
same time?
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, I mean, yesterday, for example, it was my anniversary, and I went to see a play called My Fair Lady.
Happy
Now,
anniversary. Should I sing a
thank
song?
you. Now, a few years back, I think if you went to see that play, the majority of the cast would be white.
Mm,
But now the majority of the cast, including the leading parts, and that was Eliza Doodle, were
yeah,
black. And that was a complete surprise to me. And what it did show is that the talent was always there. They just weren't considered for the role. So I
mm,
think what we want is we just simply want the opportunities to show we can do the job, take a chance on us,
yeah.
not because not because you're thinking, oh gosh, can I afford to get it wrong with this guy or this woman? If they've got the skill sets, give them a chance. Let them get the role, rather than perhaps if the interview panel's all white, they tend to take on board what looks the same to them.
So therefore, what is very important is that whosoever is in position need to actually be fair. But the fairness is going to come from people putting pressure at the same time. Is it through policies as well? Because the same thing a while ago, which was talk about where that lady said, I'm not going to just hire persons for ticking box exercise, but there could be some positive discrimination to a certain extent.
No. We don't want positive discrimination. I think what we have seen in America over the last couple of years is
Yeah.
the Rooney Law. And the Rooney Law is that for every position they have to have an equal number of diverse candidates come forward.
Yeah.
And that was really that came about initially in the NFL when we were seeing all the quarterbacks being white, and
Yeah.
and there was this sort of there was this sort of commentary that black players couldn't be the quarterback being the main person on the team who leads the team.
Yes.
It's only in the last couple of years that we've seen that, and as a consequence of seeing black quarterbacks now, we've seen black quarterbacks win the Super Bowl, and suddenly now, just like in football over here, where you see a lot of the teams have got have actually got 70% of their players black, we're now seeing the same in the NFL. We're seeing them in all positions, both in senior management roles in the club and also on the pitch. So I think if there was, if there is maybe a law that does say, look, you've got to make sure that when you hire these when you have these roles for senior positions, that you have to make sure that you do put forward candidates both who are white and black, so that there is a fair representation of those people applying for the job and actually getting interviewed for them.
But there's a big thing. There's a big question before we go. We can finish off on this bit. It's about the elevation of our people. At the same time, we're seeing the rise of, as you mentioned, the Asians in the States on top of these big corporations. We're seeing in the UK the possibility, yes, it is still a possibility, of the Prime Minister could be an Asian, an Indian. And somehow knowing the black community per se. And I'm not saying the black political black, because in some terms Rishi can be considered black, but we're not talking Rishi. What I believe that there's a positive rise at the same time. I believe that there's a lot of people out there who are doing fantastic things, but somehow it is not reaching to the surface. It is filtering below.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I think what we need to see is we need to see more publicity around ethnic minority individuals who are achieving, so that we're not always constantly hearing about the negative side of ethnic minorities. We don't want to constantly sort of hear on the news about gun crime and and all the rest of it. I'm not saying that that's not important, but what I'm saying is, why don't we also give some praise and give some exposure to those individuals who are also doing well. Young. For example, my daughter said to me this afternoon that one of her old students has had his business now since 2015 when he was a teenager, and he's still he's got a business in where he's now got his product, his hat business into shops. Or we see black individuals, ethnic minority individuals in roles that normally we wouldn't see them in. I think it's just a matter of actually celebrating our achievements and actually seeing us in roles that in a positive role model position. You know, when we see TV dramas, let's be the doctor. When we, you know, let's be the consultant. Let's be the, you know, we don't want to be stereotyped into, you know, we're always the gangster. We're always the, you know, we're the shopkeeper. Let's actually elevate ethnic minorities so that we're seen in positive light, so that it will act as a catalyst to other people to say, well, they're doing it, I can.
I'm buzzing to say for you to tell Naomi as well that it would be great to even know that guy, you know, the 15-year-old who's actually into this business, because you're so right. They normally get this level of prominence when something big happens, and then all the media go for them all of a sudden, they're dropped. But we, yourself, myself, we also need to recognize these young men and give them that profile as well. So yeah, let's see if we can even get him on. Let's see if we can get him on to what's your views on the next prime minister. You know, we got to bring these guys on, Anthony. We're getting younger at the same time, you know.
Well, just in closing, Sylbourne, I mean, you have to remember as well, look at the young lad who sadly passed away, who set up SBTV.
Yes.
You know, he was, you know, he was a Princess Trust ambassador. He was an MBE. Yet he was only 30 something. I think it was 32 or 33, right? And yet, you know, he had achieved so much. You know, he launched a career of people like Stormzy, Ed Sheeran. You know, clearly, you know, we do have a lot of talented individuals out there. We just don't celebrate them.
And I think that is what to do. And so ladies and gentlemen, what we've got to do is celebrate our people, celebrate ourselves, celebrate the whole world. But at the same time, we've got to celebrate our people a bit more. Am I correct there?
Indeed.
Because I believe that there's great potential in us. And something I said to someone all the while, that no matter what, there is an ember, or there's a flame, or there's a fire. There's always something powerful. This is where I get into my motivational zone. An explosive talent in each person, Anthony, isn't it? And we've got to find that to pull it out. No matter.
Well, I think you're right, Sylbourne. But I think, you know, just in closing, I mean, my philosophy has always been, you know, don't look at things half empty. Look at things half full, because, you know, at the end of the day, you know, that's the mindset two people can have. They can either see something. I always remember a story very quickly before we wrap up.
Keep talking.
There was a story of a gentleman who went to, I think it was Africa. It was a salesman, and when he got there, he said he actually was selling shoes. And when he got there, he actually called his company up and said, "Look, nobody wears shoes over here. I'm not going to do very well selling any products here." And he said, "Look, you know, can I come back?" And he came back, and then another salesman went out there and said, "Crikey!" He rang his company up and said, "Listen, nobody wears shoes out here. You better actually get the factory to increase the actual manufacturing there, because I reckon I could sell a fortune." So you had two individuals who saw the same situation, but one saw it half empty, one saw half full. And what that translates in is one saw an opportunity and one saw nothing. Yes.
And ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I can say this is half full. I wanted to just grab this book. This book is Think It, Plan It, Do It Now. There you can see Think It, Plan It, Do It Now. And that is by Anthony Francis. Anthony, tell us about your book here. How people can get it.
Well, it's available on Amazon. You can get it as a hardback that Sylbourne is holding, or you can, if you're someone who likes to have it on your Kindle on holiday, you can also read it on your holiday on your Kindle. It's all about how to actually take action now to avoid procrastination, to actually enable you to take your ideas forward and to implement them in the quickest time possible with processes, and at the same time it gives you motivational quotes, and also inspires you with some really good case studies to enable you to actually overcome your challenges.
And this is my signed copy version here, ladies and gentlemen. And Anthony, what fell out of it a while ago? I can't believe it. My bookmark has been a picture I haven't seen for years. Hold on, that's me.
Wow.
That's me. I just realized the picture there. Well, anyway, that was really good looking at that picture there. When I was,
I'll send you a picture that will surprise you in a minute, Sylbourne.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, listen, I want to thank you so much for joining. Anthony, thank you so much for that conversation. And yes, to speak to Naomi, that's your daughter, of course, ladies and gentlemen, to and your daughter, she's a singer as well. We need to we need to really get her on as well. She's a dynamic entertainer. Let's get that young man on. Let's get that young man on, and let's also, what I'm going to try to do, thinking about it now, is that anytime we have shows like this, if we can try to find a young person to come on and share their views, because really and truly they have views, but sometimes they think we don't take them serious at times. Now we've got to show that that's not the case.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's very important that, and also it's another avenue to sort of show that they're being positive as a role model.
Yes, definitely. Okay, good, good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for those on Instagram, watch those on Facebook and those on YouTube. You can watch replay. Let's just hear your views about who you think would be the next prime minister. What is it that you would like the prime minister to do, and what policies would you like to see? Also, most importantly, in regards to the cost of living with energy, oil and gas, what do you do? Will you pay those bills, or will you actually go to number 10 Downing Street and knock on Liz Truss's door? Well, that's of course if she's the prime minister, and say, sort it out, sort it out, sort it out. Thank you very much and have a good night. Anthony, peace out, buddy. Thank you, sir. Anthony, don't go, okay? Cheers. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, have a good night, and it was a pleasure as usual. See you Saturday night on Talking Sip. As usual, we talk on different topics, and I'll see you around. Thank you very much.